Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, June 30th, 2017, the WNW 290. I want to talk to you about the sad state of the propaganda media in America. I actually had somebody write me and say, well, how do you know this didn't happen at CNN when you were there? I worked at CNN as an investigative correspondent from '06 to mid-'08 for about 2.5 years. I said it didn't happen while I was there because I was in charge of the ideas and in charge of my own unit. It didn't happen. Nothing like it is today. And the reason why I bring that up is that here we have this retraction CNN did with 3 resigned from CNN after Russia story retraction. This is about a guy named Anthony Scaramucci, who's a friend and a consultant possibly for the president, also certainly a good friend of Donald Trump Jr. This was a story that could have embarrassed the president. And basically, in my opinion, they alluded that he was committing treason by colluding with the Russians. Scaramucci reportedly had a $100 million lawsuit was going to put up against CNN. And consequently, while CNN's trying to get bought out or merge with AT&T, wow, they retracted the story. And you know what? They fired the wrong people. Well, excuse me, resigned. But they fired the wrong people. The highest person there was the head of the unit. And, I guess evidently it looked like they produced stories for other talent at CNN. I was the head of my unit. I was the investigative reporter. If I was saying it, the buck stopped on my desk. I came up with most, not all, but most of the ideas because I wanted to send the ideas upstairs and I wanted them to be ideas that I could do, that I know that were real ideas. And all those ideas had research and work to them. Before you got green-lighted to, hire crews and take crews on the road and rent rental cars and have airline tickets and fly around the country and build your story, you had to have a pretty good idea of what the story was going to be. And that all happened in the approval process. There is no way these three people stuck this story on the air. And one of them, the head of the union, was out at IRE, Investigative Reporters and Editors Conference. They just stuck whatever they wanted on the air. When I was there were 3 pillars. There was the journalism review pillar, and that was done by out of Atlanta, and that was a high-ranking executive, not somebody that did noun-verb agreement. There was legal, and on a story like this, those 2 people and standards, those 3 pillars would have been in on this story before they ever wrote this story. So the idea that these people just stuck this story on CNN.com, preposterous. The head of legal should go. The head of CNN.com should be fired. The head of the journalism review that reviewed this script should be fired. The head of standards that was in on this, or should have been in on this, should be fired. And Jeff Zucker, the president of CNN, who's responsible for this kind of environment at CNN, which is absolutely crazy and not the environment that was there when I was there. Even when George Bush was in the White House, that was not the environment that was at CNN. We're going to get George Bush at all costs. Was there people that leaned left? Sure. Not like this. And I actually heard the wackadoodles on CNN talk about they're protecting their sources. I couldn't use an anonymous source. An investigation? That's what we're talking about here. The threshold for me using an anonymous source was through the roof. I never did. I mean, it would have to be something like 1 million people are going to die, and there's this doctor at the CDC that's going to release this study that's going to save 1 million people, but he can't give his name because he's afraid somebody may kill him. I mean, that never happened, but I never used an anonymous source. I couldn't do it. They were like, "You're kidding me? No way." I mean, think about the New York Times with the story with, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again, where the New York Times did a story about what Comey's friend at the law school, is an anonymous source to the New York Times that basically alleges that the president committed obstruction of justice. He didn't. It's totally bogus. But I couldn't imagine walking to my boss's office, "Hey, I got an anonymous source, and it's about the president committing obstruction of justice." And he'd say, "Who is it?" "Oh, I can't tell you. And we can't put his name out there." "Okay, well, what do you got? How do you know?" "I got a document." "Do you have the document?" "No, he's going to read it to me on the phone." Well, evidently the friend didn't have it either. There's no way I'd get that story done. I'd have to have that approved ahead of time. And that's what I'm telling you about these 3 guys that they fired, that I think were forced to resign and they got a confidentiality agreement. The people who should go are the management people at CNN. They should be gone, and all the way to the top, Jeff Zucker. Because the inmates do not run the asylum. The reporters don't tell the bosses, I'm going to do a story on this and you're going to like it or not, and I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Didn't happen. So then when it rains at CNN, it pours. Project Veritas just happens to dump their video out on undercover investigation. Producer admits network hyping mostly BS Trump-Russia scandal for the ratings. And we're talking, the producer is a guy by the name of John Banfield. He's a medical producer. And but listen, he's in on the meetings. He goes to the show meetings. He's in on the story production meetings. He tells the bosses of the shows, and he goes to the meetings where his reporter is going to be and pitch it. He hears all of what's going on. And that's why he said this, Banfield. He said, so I just feel like they don't really have it, but they want to just keep digging. So they want to, he's basically saying, and he's in the meeting hearing that they're forcing people to follow a false narrative. And I've told you this a while ago, that this Trump collusion story, nothing, nada, nuka, zero. There's no collusion. Next month will be a year. And not a single shred of evidence that showed Donald Trump or anybody on his team was colluding with the Russians to rig the elections. That didn't happen, folks. Then when you hear the Obama former intelligence people and former security people, every one of them said, yeah, there's no evidence of collusion. And on top of that, and they have a single vote's been changed, by the Russian. Nope, not a single vote. No, not a single vote. This is the top intelligence, CIA, DIA, the NSA, the top intelligence people. Not a single vote was changed by the Russians. And Obama was told about this in August of 2016, according to the Washington Post, more anonymous sources. Anonymous sources, for this say that they had eyes-only, a package sent to the White House, and only Obama and his top people could open it up. This is in August of 2016. And, Obama was out in October of 2016 saying, oh, the Russians, they couldn't affect our election. Too decentralized. He's out on record. I've heard him say it. Too decentralized. No. So when they find out that the Russians do this, and, Donald Trump wins, it wasn't a problem until after Donald Trump wins. They thought Hillary was going to win. My question is, Obama didn't, what a dereliction of duty. So you knew this is a profound national security issue. The FBI was told about it. The CIA was told about it. Susan Rice, his national security, top national security person, was told about it. A lot of the top people were told about it. And when the only victim is the Democratic National Committee, whose servers supposedly, allegedly, were hacked. Of course, there's some contested stuff around that story. Seth Rich, who was an IT guy for the DNC, and that he may have done or somebody at the DNC may have released it because they were mad that Bernie Sanders was being cheated by the DNC and Hillary. There's also, a soft coup, a counter coup by the intelligence agencies, and consequently, we found out from WikiLeaks and Julian Assange that, the CIA has software that makes it look like the Russians did it, but I digress. So when they find out that the only victim is the DNC, and John Podesta, who supposedly was hacked, that's what he says. Other reports say he fell for a phishing scam, but anyway. So the only victim really is the DNC and the Democrats. And this is a profound national security issue. When it came time to get the servers from the DNC said no, told the FBI, no, sorry. Not going to. The Division of Homeland Security, nope, sorry, no. No, you're not going to see it. We're going to have a third party take a look at these servers for us. They didn't get a warrant. They didn't go and get those servers immediately because it was a profound national security issue. They didn't demand it under threat of imprisonment, of destroying evidence. They didn't demand it. They get a warrant. Outrageous. And so, as I've been telling you, there's no there, and the mainstream press knows it. And CNN knows it, and that was revealed. Here's another Project Veritas. Van Jones, who was a former Clintonite, Russia's a nothing burger. This is according to Project Veritas with H-title, American Pravda, CNN Part 2. That's a Russian, bogus news organization, Pravda, which is pretty sad when CNN's being compared to Pravda, where they know they have a false narrative. They know it. The producers know it. Everybody knows that the Russian thing's a false narrative. Every piece of evidence for the last year points that there's no collusion. and it's a false narrative. And here is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who talks about these videos from Project Veritas, saying that, Sarah Sanders says that, CNN's fake news sparks epic meltdown from triggered reporter. One of the reporters in the White House briefing was like, well, you're bullying us, and, we're just trying to do our jobs. That's what the reporters are saying, right? You're just trying to do your jobs, so you're going to follow a false narrative, and two synapses aren't going to pop together after, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, almost a year, and, whoa, this is a false narrative. You're going to continue to follow a false narrative. That's doing your job. You're an idiot. Give me your press credentials. You're fired. And then you have the CNN people talking about protecting their sources. As I've told you, I couldn't do a story with an anonymous source. You shouldn't do stories with anonymous sources. And if an anonymous source gives you information, you should follow you to other sources who will go on record for protecting our sources. That's not journalism, folks. I can make up 100 anonymous sources. Oh, I've got, with one story about Donald Trump being under investigation, we had 5 anonymous sources. Well, if you really did have 5 anonymous sources, you got 5 felonies committed, and they're trying to make it look like, oh, we have legitimacy. We have 5. Well, how about 10? How about 20 anonymous sources? You can really legitimize it. It's not legitimate journalism when you're doing anonymous sources. Even Gannett, USA Today, the nation's propaganda newspaper, wouldn't allow anonymous sources. At least back in my day. You're not protecting your sources when they're anonymous sources. You're committing propaganda, character assassination. You're trying to destroy a duly elected president when you're putting out one anonymous source after another. And if they were so good, they'd come out front and center. And the bosses should make them come out front and center. They should say, no way you're going to do a story you trash the president where your source doesn't come out front and center. Oh, yeah, they're committing a felony. That's right. It's outrageous. Half the time, this CNN story where these 3 people, were forced to quit or resign, was another anonymous source. How did that get green-lighted? There's no way to back it up. Anonymous source, absolutely outrageous. Not a source. An anonymous source is not a true source. I'm sorry. Not. And then we have Sarah Huckabee Smith, who's taken over for Sean Spicer at the White House press corps, talking about, this is a disgrace, these media videos where that CNN behind the scenes is saying it's a nothing burger. We're doing it for ratings. There's no there. Disgrace to all of media, all of journalists. I think we have gone to a place where if the media can't be trusted to report the news, then there's a dangerous place for America. What I'm telling you. They are sitting in the White House press room. Well, we're doing our job. Well, we have to follow this story. You mean not following the Hillary Clinton and the private server? She was supposed to maintain records. She didn't. That's a felony. She's I think, and I've said this before, and I think you could pretty well prove it. And I think the Clinton cash books point to this points to this as well. Private server to cover the fact she was taking treasonous bribes given in the form of donations to the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation, which part of that is being shut down. People stopped giving money to it because she can't give out favors. She basically monetized the office of the Secretary of State. A fifth of U.S. uranium production fell into Russian hands after 9 people donated $145 million in donations to the Clinton Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative, whatever you want to call it. And, this is a Uranium One deal that was laid out in the Clinton cash book. And that's not a story either. An incoming president being basically, attacked by an outgoing president and his administration to destroy him and try to get him impeached and try to get the people around him sent to jail and or fired is outrageous. And that's the real story. That's why you have all these multiple, felony leaks and false stories, false narratives. It's absolutely outrageous. And if you look at this Trump collusion story, not a single shred of evidence. And on top of that, the top intelligence people said not a single vote was changed by the Trump administration. But then we keep having one story after another. The most recent is, I think a guy in Virginia that was getting, registering dead people to vote. In my county, in Guilford County, the Register of Deeds found out there was 30 or 40,000 people that were still, registered to vote, and they're dead. So, yeah, the voting fraud and election fraud that the Democrats keep telling us that isn't happening is happening. And it's happening in spades and all over the country, particularly in places like California. where they're robbing the real votes of real citizens by allowing non-citizens, illegal aliens, to vote. But I digress. And, remember when I was telling you about how AT&T was buying Time Warner, which the subsidiary of that is CNN? And I said, boy, if I was AT&T, I'd be mad as all get out if they were devaluing my property as I was negotiating, trying to buy this. And well, here we go. New York Post, CNN boss in crosshairs. That's Jeff Zucker, one of the top people, the first person I'd fire at AT&T Time Warner if AT&T Time Warner merger approved. I would can about half the people at CNN. I'd start with Jeff Zucker. Number 2 would be Jim Acosta. And if I ever took over, which I'm not, but if I did, I would be firing all the show bosses that were involved in this latest thing. I would be firing Chris Cuomo, who sat on the air and said, we've done everything we can for Hillary Clinton. This is during the election. Wow, you're biased. You're fired. Gone. Poof. Jim Acosta, give me your credentials. You're sitting there arguing with a president-elect about a dossier, about him, a totally bogus dossier that you should have ran down before you tried to throw a pie in the face of the president-elect just before he was elected president. Can we have a question? Can I have a question? Can I have a question? That's when Trump came up, you're very fake news. And they are. And he didn't run down his own story, which, wow, he should have said, oh, this is a totally fake dossier. You got him, urinating on beds with prostitutes, and Michael Cohen. I've told you, wrong, Michael Cohen. As soon as I'd have found that out, poof, gone. I'd be firing all kinds of people. And then I would, if I was the head of CNN, then I would get a meeting with the Trump administration and say, listen, we're still going to ask hard questions, but please stop calling us fake news. But they're doubling down. What the press is doing is, you're bullying us. You're making it dangerous for us. No introspection where they, a Harvard study, which is one of the most liberal institutions in America, a Harvard study had upwards of 98% of the stories were negative to Donald Trump and his administration. CNN, I think I pegged it at something like 93% of the stories at CNN are negative to Donald Trump. That is propaganda. That is simply, let's read it, propaganda. Information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Yes, destroying Trump is a point of view held by the deep state and the Democrats and some rhino Republicans. Yes. Oh, and also the mainstream media. And for them to sit back, and they started this stuff, as I pointed out many times, during the election. I'll just say this, op-ed piece on the New York Times, which basically reporters, are required to stop Donald Trump. Michael Wolff, reporters of their own volition, or LA Times. Everybody was trying to stop Trump before the election. And listen, I'm telling you, the inmates don't run the asylum. I didn't tell my bosses what to do when I was at CNN. It's the bosses. That's why these 3 guys that were treated as chumps who should have been supervised, and they probably were supervised, and somebody did read, but I'll never know that. And, basically they have to fall on their swords, and the people that should fall on their swords are the executives at CNN. The head of .com, Jeff Zucker, the head of CNN, the head of Legal Standards, the head of the Journalism Review, everybody who touched that story, fired, gone, poof. If you're that stupid, you need to be gone. And this is what's dangerous about the press doing this. They focus on non-stories and stories that are provably false and that aren't stories, and they don't actually do real journalism that shows the public things they need to be tipped off or worried about. And this is why places, and I predicted this, the layoffs are going to be stunning in 2017. I predicted that, and here we are. New York Times editors decry humiliating process of layoffs. They're getting rid of 50 out of 100 editors, getting rid of them. They're trying to do more with less at the New York Times. Are they laying people off because they're selling too many newspapers and getting too many clicks online? I don't think so. I don't know if the mainstream media can recover after this. I thought after the election, okay, well, I'll go back to a more normal thing, and I'll go back to just covering what I think is cool news and what's good and what people need to know about, and they're going to go back to being more. No, they tripled down on the bias and the hatred and the propaganda. They're not the news, period. They're the propaganda. It's false. And then we have, this is rich. Remember I told you Bob Woodward, who, Woodward and Bernstein, Watergate, of Watergate fame, which basically was a penny ante break-in, and Nixon erased 18 minutes of tape, and he went down over obstruction of justice, right? Really, compared to Hillary Clinton monetizing the State Department with our enemies of America and the Russians, and taking treasonous bribes by the millions, if not billions of dollars, that's not a story. But Woodward, Bob Woodward, had at one point at the Washington Post 20 people digging dirt on Donald Trump. 20. And remember my famous thing? Well, why don't you have 10 people work on the Clinton thing? Because, she erased 30,000 emails after she got a subpoena. She certainly didn't maintain the public records, which is a felony not to do so. It appears she obstructed justice. Why don't you do that? The other things that they're not working on, besides the huge story of an outgoing president surveilling and trying to destroy an incoming president, is Hillary Clinton. I mean, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative is closing down. Parts of the Clinton Foundation shutting down. People stopped giving money because they couldn't get any favors. That's not a story. You're kidding me. Loretta Lynch on the plane with a target and or witness an investigation. The former president for 30 minutes. Her telling Comey it's a matter, obstruction of justice is a lie. Well, that's a lie. Comey basically coming up with, a way to have some. Nobody still has ever seen the Comey memo, incidentally. Remember I said that memo better show up. Hey, nobody's ever seen that memo. A friend calling the New York Times and, well, here's what it says. Really? Nobody ever saw it? Totally anonymous source? And he did it for express reason to get a special prosecutor who happens to be his best friend, which by law, even the appearance of tawdriness or the appearance of unethical behavior he's required to step down. That's the law. Certainly, if he tried to get Robert Mueller and leaked a memo, which is another law break, as far as I'm concerned, and also a confidential conversation with the president, I think the guy needs a criminal defense attorney, James Comey. That ought to be investigated. It's just unbelievable what they're not doing. But the Trump collusion story, the Trump-Russia collusion, it's our duty to do. Man, stupid. Unbelievably stupid people in the White House press corps. And you're bullying us. You're making it unsafe for us. How dare anybody call them fake news? And remember what I told you? That the power of the press, real power of the press. This is why Woodward is saying, he blasts the MSM, mainstream media, of fair-mindedness is essential if you want people to trust you. This is the same guy that had 20 people try to dig up dirt on Donald Trump while he let all the shenanigans and all the, what I think, illegal activity with Hillary Clinton just fall away. And he's talking about being fair. You had 20 people working on Trump and came up with nothing. Give back your Pulitzer. You should be embarrassed. What I said about the mainstream, their power is you have to think they are fair arbiters of the truth, and that outside of a mistake here or there, that when they talk, that you'll listen and you'll believe them. What did Sarah Huckabee Sanders say? We're at a point where people don't trust the media. Ding, ding, ding. And they're now, we're bullying us, and here's what they're saying. If two synapses which touch at one time, ding, 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 they would say, wow, we're destroying our own jobs. We're destroying the media that we're in. Our bosses are allowing us and helping us and encouraging us to destroy our own business. People don't believe us. That's the problem. And then on top of that, we're chasing stories that nobody cares about, and they aren't real stories. And, here's another one. An army of lawyers fights for Trump. Yeah, well, armies of people in the deep state and the mainstream press, the third arm of the DNC, and also the Democrats are all attacking Donald Trump and trying to make it out like he's illegitimate and most people don't like him. When he is legitimate, he probably won by a wider margin, minus the election and voter fraud, and most people do like him. And so that's the stories that they're doing to try to trash Donald Trump. Meanwhile, we have this little ditty from USA Today, and there's not much in the newspapers this week, folks. Really, just not much. Here's USA Today on the 29th, and here we have poll, only 12% support GOP healthcare plan. Really? Only 12%? Well, if you look at their own little graph on the front page of this, let's see if I can get it to focus up for you. There it is. You know, if you look on here, you don't see that you don't see that stat. I don't know how they came up with that. You know, you got 30% that think it ought to go away, but not until they get another plan. You got a 14% that over here that think right here that think that it should go away no matter what. That's 54% that think it ought to go away. And then you have I don't know what 10% that just like it the way it is. Well, those are the people. 11%. Oh, those are the people getting Medicaid free. They get the free stuff. Nothing's too good for the people that don't pay for it. And then you hear this piece of reporting, which you hear all the time. Now the CBO, they're going to lose 22 million people are going to lose their insurance if the GOP plan comes through. Well, we don't even know what the GOP plan is. Let's get it here. By 2016, 22 million people. Yet they don't talk about the at least 22 million people that got thrown off their healthcare system. I know a manager at Darden Restaurants, Longhorn Steakhouse. He said, well, we used to have, insurance for our waiters and waitresses and bar people, and, we couldn't sell that anymore because Obamacare, made it illegal for us to sell that. So, they talk about 22 million people not having insurance, but, boom, not long after Obamacare went in, guess what? Everybody that some 20, 25, maybe even 30 million people, they lost their health care. And for the rest of the people, like me, mine went up 130%, and other people went up 200%. 300%. It was some people were priced completely out of it. Some people lost it altogether because it wasn't Obamacare compliant with the essential services. The free stuff that you were forced to pay for, even if you didn't use it. Sex change operations, prenatal care, vision, dental. I mean, nothing too good for the people who don't pay for it. You probably have 25 or so, maybe 30 million people who lost their health care because of Obamacare, and more are losing their health care as providers are leaving, where there's no Obamacare providers in the state because they can't make money because they have to provide too many things for free. But they don't tell you about that. That's why Trump says it's imploding. And the bad thing about not trusting the media is that, the media is a watchdog. I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat, but, Trump's going to make a mistake. I don't want him to, but, his administration, somebody's going to make a mistake, and you'll need a watchdog. That's what that's what Thomas Jefferson said. The media acted as a watchdog to keep the government straight, so we, the people, got a fair deal. And when you don't have a watchdog and people chasing real stories and asking real questions, doing real things, guess who suffers? Yes, we the people, as they're pushing some bogus story that fits their political agenda to try to get rid of Donald Trump. That's their agenda. That's what they want to do. They want to destroy Donald Trump. And they want to sit in the White House press briefing room and sit on the set of MSNBC and Joe Scarborough and Mika, what's her name, talking about how Donald Trump's unhinged. He's psychiatric. There's something wrong with him, with his psychiatric, his psyche. Something. He's mentally ill. That's what they want to. They want to put every false narrative and false thing that they can't pack up out there, including psychiatrists that think, oh, he should be taken out of office. They should surrender their medical license for watching somebody on TV and making a diagnosis like that without ever seeing somebody. But I digress. Well, what I'm saying is that we, the people, lose. We don't find out what we need to find out. That is a profound, that's what reporters should be doing, looking after the public. Here's what I think you need to know about. Here are some of the stories that you need to be aware of so you can prepare yourself, so you can understand what's going on, understand the world you live in, instead of this crazy false Russia narrative story. But here's one for you that they're not really covering much, and this is, Qatar says Saudi-led ultimatum unreasonable. Did you know that they're blockading Qatar? Do you know we have the biggest military base, Air Force base, military and Air Force base in the region in Qatar? Do you know Bahrain, where we have a naval base, is against Qatar and helping to blockade them? Do you know what kind of a mess that is? Do you know that Turkey, a NATO member, is helping Qatar? Do you know Iran, which we're not really on great relationships, where we have an air base and a military base in Qatar? Iran is giving their help to Qatar. Do you know that? Yeah, you think that might be just a bit of a problem that Americans should know about? Yeah, I do. Hey, let me tell you about this. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, all want Qatar to meet the 13-point ultimatum in return for ending the blockade of the Emirates. They got a blockade. They're cutting them off. Our Air Force and military base is there. Where our naval base, the Fifth Fleet, is, Bahrain, that country's against them. You think that's just a little complicated? You think Americans need to know about that? You think that might cause a nasty little regional war? And again, here we have, what do they want them to do? They want them to cut ties with Iran, the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Lebanon's Iran-backed Hezbollah, also shut down Al Jazeera. They think it's a propaganda arm. They also want to get paid reparations for the damage that these terrorist groups have done. I mean, it's unbelievable. They've given an ultimatum. Now, they gave that a few weeks ago, and it's going to be up soon in July, early July. What's going to happen when Qatar doesn't meet that ultimatum? Turkey is throwing their support and supposedly has a base in Qatar. Iran is throwing their support to Qatar. What's going to happen if Egypt and Saudi Arabia decide to roll tanks across the border? They can get there from Saudi Arabia. I don't know. Don't you think the press ought to be reporting on that? Here's another one, the U.S. dollar. Do you know that in January on the USDX, that's a basket of currencies that measures the value of the dollar, it was 102 on the USDX sometime in January, okay? That's right up here somewhere, okay? And now, right now, boom, and this big drop-off, it's where it is now. It's 95. Listen, for a world reserve currency that trillions of dollars of business is done every year in, that's a big drop-off. Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, had a press conference on Thursday. You think any of the pinheads at the White House press corps would say, hey, the dollar lost 5% today? Do you guys want that to happen as Treasury Secretary? You're head of the Exchange Stabilization Fund, the ESF. Is that what you're wanting to do? Do you want the dollar to sell off that much? Wouldn't that cause inflation for us, Americans here at home if the dollar devalues? Nobody asked any question about that at all. I mean, they lost 0.5% on Thursday. Now, think about it. If you had $1 million, that'd be like you losing $5 grand. Wouldn't that be like that? If you had $1 million, what would $1 be? 1%. What would that be? $10,000? Okay, so 0.5% be $5,000. You lost that one day? Whew. Stunning. That's a lot of money. If you add billions of dollars, if you add trillions of dollars, it's a lot of money. You have 0.5% in a single day. The dollar dives? That's huge. I talked to my friend Gregory Manarino about that. He said, they're trying to kill the dollar. They want to pay back in much more devalued dollars. He said, I'll tell you something else that I think happened. We just had a complete turnaround in interest rates. I mean, you hear the Fed, Janet Yellen, talking about how she's on track to raise rates. She also doesn't think there'll ever be another calamity in our lifetime. Funny. That means we're in trouble. One trader said that if she has that view that we'll never have another calamity in our lifetime, we're in deep trouble. But the Fed is trying to, get rid of all this toxic mortgage debt that they bought, a couple of $1 trillion. Now it's worth something. They want to get that off their books. The Bank of Japan wants to remove all the junk off their books. So does the Bank of England. So does the ECB. That means they're going to raise interest rates. I said, well, that sounds like debt destruction to me. It sounds like the bonds are going to lose value. And Greg said, yeah, you're right, it is. But, they're going to print money to offset that. I mean, years ago I said we're going to have inflation and deflation at the same time. Isn't that inflation and deflation at the same time? I mean, they're not going to print money to bail out the Puerto Ricans. They defaulted on $74 billion in debt and have $500 billion, they have $50 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. I mean, look at Illinois. Anybody covering that? Illinois can't sell Powerball tickets anymore. They're not solvent enough to do so. They have $250 billion in unfunded pension liabilities, $127 or $30 billion in debt, and they owe some of their contractors and people doing work for them $14.5 billion. Press isn't covering that story either. You think California and New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, those are states that are rumored to also have deep trouble. Anybody doing any work on that? Pensions are going to be destroyed. I mean, they're just going to be destroyed. I got Lynette Zhang, who's a top Wall Street pro and also a chief market analyst at a gold trading firm out in Phoenix. and she worked for Lehman Brothers, and she says, I think we're close. I mean, she's telling me if you watch, where to look. Rich people are exiting the bond and stock market. Rich people are getting their wealth to safe places. Gold, silver, diamonds, collectibles, land. Rich people are leaving the market. She's going to be the early Sunday release. Lynette Zhang, very interesting lady. You will love hearing her. I was going to interview her for 20, 25 minutes. I ended up doing 40-some minutes with her. Very interesting lady, a very common sense perspective that anybody, even a guy like me, can follow. You'll want to see her for the early Sunday release. Here's another story. And again, the big story was the president, the outgoing president, using all the resources of the intelligence services, the FBI, and even foreign intelligence services, as Judge Napolitano has said. He got kind of taken to the woodshed for that, but that was later proven true, that foreign intelligence services were being used and utilized by Obama against Donald Trump and his incoming team. Well, here's Susan Rice, who's a former top national security person for President Obama, and she agrees to testify before House Intelligence Panel behind closed doors. She unmasked all these Americans that they were surveilling, that got caught up in surveillance, including like the General Flynn, who they printed up a transcript of his phone call with the Russian ambassador, I believe, Kislyak, which is illegal a felony leak of information. They're investigating him. He still hasn't been charged with a single thing. They say he didn't disclose some ties he had, some business dealings or whatever. Still, not a single charge has been levied against him. And he certainly isn't accused of colluding with the Russians to help spike the election, to help, juke the election for Donald Trump. But she says she didn't do anything wrong. And I'm telling you, I think this whole Russia collusion story thing, I just wonder if the Russian Donald Trump collusion, that part of the story, I just wonder if this is just not being used for a giant a cover so they could say, well, yeah, we surveilled the Trump administration, but there was, he was colluding with the Russians, which of course there's no evidence of that whatsoever. So because if they don't have that story, the CIA and the Russian collusion story with Trump and his associates, they broke many laws, basically trying to destroy him and surveil him and unmask people and release confidential information to try to get people fired, thrown in jail, and get President Trump impeached. Wow, a lot of laws were broken. A lot of people are in big trouble if that story is not really a story, that they just did it to see what they could find out. That's what I think went on, but I can't prove it. Finally, another story the press should be covering that they're not covering because they're tied up with the Russian phony collusion story. This is the cauldron, the Yellowstone caldera is what they call it. And you see these little spikes around here? You see all this right here? Scientists, and this is a story on Zero Hedge, which I think's true, they say they're worried about 800-some earthquakes that have been happening around the caldera, which has been pretty much dormant. And all of a sudden, they're having all this earthquake activity. That's a big pool of magma. That could blow off through here. That could cause an unbelievable calamity in North America. And really, actually, for the whole world, could cause some sort of nuclear ash winter around the whole world. And let me just show you on the map here. This is Yellowstone, this box. That's in the northwest corner of Wyoming, right? And they say in an area, and I kind of guesstimated this, an area about 600 miles around Yellowstone, 90% of the people would die. And if you come back here, this is 1,000 miles around there. Could have 10 feet of ash in some places within 1,000 miles around. This is, St. Louis is right in here. That's about 1,350 miles away. You'd have ash, probably I had another report where if this did blow off, all the way to North Carolina, you might have as much as an inch of ash right here. It would block the sun. You wouldn't be able to grow food. But that's not, this is scientists talking. This isn't some crazy time. This is earthquake activity. They're worried about this thing going from dormant to not so dormant. And that's just one of the many stories the press isn't covering. And I don't know if they did cover it. Would you believe them? I don't know. I mean, again, I'm going to end this the way I started. The press, they get their power with you believing what they're saying is true and that they are fair and honest arbiters of the truth. Do you think the mainstream media has been fair, honest arbiters of the truth? Yeah. No. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com with your comments. I get people all the time that write me, give me an email saying, wow, I like your site, but I love your commenters. They're so smart. I agree. Some of the smartest people on the internet comment on USAWatchdog.com. Also, thank you for your donations. That helps us out. And just remember, with all the terrible news I tell you, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, above all, spiritually. Fear not. God the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ, are firmly in control. Fear not. Thank you for supporting, again, USAWatchdog.com.